Alright, so I guess I want this video to be a bit more formal. I don't know, I guess that's why I'm standing up. I don't really have any real reason for standing up besides the fact that I haven't uploaded a video in kind of a long time. And this video is going to be kind of long, so because of those reasons, I jumped to the logic that, hey, why not, stand up, wear a dumbass shirt, so this video appears a bit more formal compared to my other videos where I'm usually just sitting at a desk. I really don't know why I'm standing up, actually. Kind of a weird random choice, but anyway, so this video I'm going to be assessing the Switch 2 and giving my overall thoughts on it. I'll be assessing it in a multitude of different factors. This includes design of console, power of console, launch lineup, first year lineup, price of console, price of games, UI, new features, name, branding, and probable success. And after that, I'll give my overall rating on it and my overall thoughts on it. So this is kind of like an updated version of the video I uploaded back in January 2025 where I gave predictions for the Switch 2 and Nintendo's 2025 in general. So this will be kind of like a look back on that video and see if the Switch 2 truly did live up to the initial hype I had for it. I guess the Switch 2 hasn't come out yet. It doesn't come out until like in around a month at the time of recording this, but we do know a lot more about it compared to when I upload that video. So I thought because of that, this video is still justified. So yeah, let's get right into it, starting with the design of the console, which I gave an 8 out of 10. I would have liked a bit more color, but I do understand why they didn't really go with a lot of color for the design of this console, because the original Switch one was pretty colorful, namely in its very bright neon colored Joy-Cons, and I guess they wanted to deviate from the design of the Switch 1, so they decided to make the Switch 2 less colorful, which I do understand.
And I know that like the Switch 1 also had the monochrome Joy-Con variant, but the more popular variant of the Switch 1 was the neon red and blue Joy-Con one, which is why I specifically mentioned that one.
I would have liked colored buttons, but I guess that would have kind of meshed with the design of the Switch 2. I guess they kind of made like a white design for the Switch 2, and the colored buttons would have fit more there, because that was one of my wishes for the Switch 2 in that video. But colored buttons now being a thing on the Switch 2, I do understand, and I still do like the design of the console. It's very sleek. I think it accomplishes what is set out to be a sequel to the Switch, while also being very similar to the Switch 1 at the same time. For the power of the console, I gave it a 9 out of 10. I was pleasantly surprised by the power of the console when I was watching the Switch 2 Direct, as it is 1080p, 120 FPS in handheld mode, and 4K in docked, I believe, which is a huge step up from the Switch. I believe the Switch was 720, 30 FPS in handheld mode, so yeah, that is a very large step up from the Switch 1, and I think it is the biggest leap in power from the previous console in Nintendo's history. And I think because that gives it a standing compared to other consoles in this current console generation. Obviously, it's not as powerful as those consoles in this console generation, but I think it still has a standing, a footing compared to them, which I did not expect. I expected to be severely underpowered compared to consoles, maybe not severely, but noticeably underpowered compared to other consoles like the PS5 and Xbox Series XS. But the power of the Switch 2, it is a surprise. A good surprise at that, but still a surprise. I was not expecting, especially 120 FPS in handheld mode. Are you kidding me? That is such a leap from the Switch 1. It's crazy. So because of that, I give it a 9 out of 10. For its launch lineup, I give it a 9 out of 10 as well. Mario Kart World is easily the best possible launch game for the Switch 2. Launching with a Mario Kart for a Nintendo console, that's a guaranteed success right there. I really could not think of a better launch game for the Switch 2. Overall lineup besides Mario Kart World is still pretty solid. It mostly consists of third-party ports, to my knowledge, and the only other first-party things there are is the GameCube, Switch Online, and the two Switch 2 Zelda Edition games. But Nintendo in general isn't really known for their launch lineups, so I think because of that, the Switch 2 has a better launch lineup than like 80% of other Nintendo consoles. Still not fabulous if you look past Mario Kart World, but I think just because Mario Kart World is the launch game, I give the launch lineup a 9 out of 10. For its first year lineup, I give it a slightly lower score, but still a pretty good one, at 8.5 out of 10. The quality of the first party games are great. Like Mario Kart World introduces so many new concepts and ideas to the Mario Kart franchise, and I'm sure it will be an incredibly fun Mario Kart game. Donkey Kong Bonanza, like I don't even need to explain why that game looks great, it just does, it looks fabulous. Kirby Air Riders, like, are you kidding me? Masahiro Sakurai coming back from the Kirby graveyard to direct a game 20 years after the first Kirby Air Ride, which was coincidentally the last Kirby game he directed as well. Like, that is a blessing. Absolutely it is. So the first party games that they have shown off for Switch 2's first year look absolutely great. The Switch 2 Edition games are pretty good as well. Only Kirby in the Forgotten Land and Mario Party Jamboree Switch 2 Edition games show off any like new substantial content besides like quality and performance improvements. But I think the new stuff that they are adding to the Forgotten Land and Mario Party Jamboree Switch 2 Editions definitely makes up for the lack of new things they're adding to the other Switch 2 Edition games. And technically the year isn't over. I don't know why I'm saying technically. It isn't over yet, so hypothetically Nintendo could do another Switch 2 Direct in summer of 2025 and show off the remaining major first party games they have for the remainder of the year, which I do think they'll do because we are only 5 months into the year, and I'm sure they have more big things to show off for the remainder of 2025. But so far, it isn't quite as strong as 2017, as I wish Nintendo would have showed off like maybe 2 more first-party games during that Switch 2 Direct, so there are more major first-party games during like the first half of 2025. But I think so far, the quality of them is great. The quantity, not so much, but I think the quality definitely makes up for it. Third-party stuff they showed off is great. I think the third-party support for the Switch 2 is better than the Switch 1's early third-party support. Like games like Elden Ring coming to the Switch 2 is great. I'm just very happy with how many major third-party games are being ported over, because we really didn't see that with the Switch 1. So because of that, I give the first year lineup an 8.5 out of 10. For the price of the console, I give it a 7.5 out of 10. I would have wished it to be $400, along with many others, as that was the price a lot of insiders and leaks were suggesting. $450 is still pretty steep, but I think it's more justifiable than the game prices. Speaking of which, prices of games I gave a 6.5 out of 10. The fact that even some Switch 2 games, I know it's not all, but even some of them are $80 is absolutely crazy and will set a very bad standard for the game industry, even though most of them are $70, which is pretty steep, but a lot of people were expecting that to be the standard for Switch 2 games because Tears of the Kingdom was $70, so naturally, going to the next console generation, there will be a price increase for its games, but still $80 is insane, and because of that, I give it a 6.5 out of 10. The UI, I gave it the worst score out of any of these, which is a 4 out of 10. It is way too similar to the Switch one. There are no new themes, no new eShop music, and they had so long to work on it, but they changed virtually nothing compared to the Switch 1 UI. I was expecting at least a couple new themes, but it's still just black and white, which is so disappointing. You've had 8 years to work on this, and you can still only cough up 2 themes for the Switch 2? Are you kidding me? That's so stupid. It still appears pretty sleek and fast, which were the main things I liked about the Switch 1 UI. And of course, the Switch 2 UI will have those pros, since it is essentially the same as the Switch 1 UI. But still, I think the fact that it added essentially nothing new, like, that's so disappointing. I give it a 4 out of 10. I probably should have made it lower. Same with the game prices. New features, give it a 7 out of 10. The mouse mode is easily my new favorite feature, as I believe it will lead to more interesting and engaging game design for Switch 2 games. The C button being locked behind a subscription in around a year is very disappointing, as it's a physical button, but you technically have to pay for it. Game chat is way too similar to Discord. They should have done more with the top USB-C port, like maybe adding that top screen thing they apparently had a patent for. And the new accessories look somewhat dull, like the camera, and they are kind of pricey. I think that's the main con with the new Switch 2 features, that a lot of them are very pricey and you have to pay for them. Like, not a lot of them you just get right from the get-go, besides the mouse mode, which is probably why it's my favorite feature. So I gave it a 7 out of 10. For the name, I gave it an 8 out of 10. It's probably the best possible name for the console. I would have liked a more extravagant name, like the Super Switch, which they were considering, but I understand why they went with the Switch 2, as it's more straight to the point and clear in what the Switch 2 is trying to be. It's different from the Wii U, where the Wii U's name wasn't as clear as the Switch 2. Like, if you said Wii U to like an average person, they would not know what you're talking about. It makes the point of the Switch 2 very obvious, which I think I already touched upon. It is still very generic, though, even though it is very clear. It's probably the best possible name they could have chose for it. Still very generic, which is why I only give it an 8, especially compared to previous Nintendo console names like the GameCube or the Wii. For the branding, I give it an 8.5 out of 10. It is a lot better than Wii U's branding. I think a lot of that has to do with it mentioning it's a successor to the Switch a lot, which the Wii U never really did. It unintentionally advertised itself as an accessory to the Wii, which I don't think the Switch 2 is doing. It's far more clear in what the Switch 2 is supposed to be. I think the logo could have been a bit better, like the placement of the two is a bit odd in the logo. They could have, you know, switched that around. I think because the Switch already has two versions of it, being the OLED and the Lite, it might make the Switch 2 a bit confusing to consumers as to if this is like the new Nintendo console or if it's just another Nintendo Switch variant. But I think there will be less confusion relating to the Switch 2 than there was for the Wii U. For the probable success, I gave it a 9.5 out of 10. Probably won't sell as well as the Switch 1, which is very hard to beat in terms of sales, so I won't really be surprised if they don't beat the Switch 1 in terms of sales. It will still probably sell very well. It's sold out everywhere online. Analysis are saying it will be the biggest video game console launch of all time. So there is no reason to believe that won't sell like well at all. I think it will still sell very well, even compared to the Switch 1. It will still sell like easily tens of millions of copies within its first couple years. Sales may dip though after its initial couple years as the sugar high kind of wears off. It'll be kind of hard to justify paying $450 for the Switch 2 to like the average consumer in a couple years after that like new console high wears off. I still think it will sell very well. My overall rating for the Switch 2, technically it's a 7.8 out of 10, but I rounded that up to an 8 out of 10. The reasons I listed here are a good first year lineup, fun new features, great marketing, but the cons like the bad UI and pricing choices are very apparent, and that's why I have to scale down the rating a bit. I still think I will have a lot of fun with the Switch 2, but I am a bit disappointed, well, very disappointed with the Switch 2 in some of its factors, including its prices, both for the console and the game, and its very poor UI, which is essentially the same as the Switch 1. But besides that, I think the Switch 2 will be a very fun console with a great first-party lineup, a third-party lineup that's even greater than the Switch 1. It will just overall be a great Nintendo console. So yeah, thanks for watching, everyone, and well, bye-bye.